There's no such thing as a bad vegan. Move at the pace that works for you. There are so many new exciting foods to try, and diversity is super important. Spicy lentils, protein-packed silken tofu ricotta, dairy-free pesto, and a Mediterranean bean salad. Not just that boring same old, oh my goodness, that's all she can eat.
Have you been thinking about eating a more plant-based diet, but worry about the details or even what your loved ones will think, and that's keeping you stuck? Or maybe you're already eating vegan and you're worried about missing out on essential nutrients. Well, today's episode is for you. And actually, you'll probably find it helpful even if you're not vegan. Kate Galli is a vegan health coach, animal rights activist, and creator of StrongBodyGreenPlanet.com. Kate shares some great tips for getting extra protein in and getting organized, and you're probably even going to want to take some notes for this one. Welcome to The Thriving Metabolism, where it's my mission to empower you so that you and your metabolism thrives. I'm Louise Digby, women's weight loss expert and founder of the Nourish Method to Lasting Fat Loss. Let's dive in. Okay, well, welcome back. And we've got here Kate with us, and I'm so happy to have you here, Kate. I can't wait to find out all about what you do and learn from your wisdom. And I also want to say a massive thank you for coming on, because I know that it is silly o'clock in the morning over there, right? You're in Australia. What time is it?
Oh, it's 3 a.m., so it's a little
Oh,
bit dark here, but I am an early bird, so it's genuinely all good, Louise.
oh, bless you. Well, I want to find out about your story and what brought you into the world of nutrition, and particularly into the world of vegan nutrition. So tell me a little bit about how that all happened.
Amazing. So I guess I was that typical animal loving little girl who still ate animals and used to declare actually I could never be vegetarian until that all changed and I became vegetarian at 16 years old for the animals. It would actually be a further 23 years before I became vegan. So that was 8 years ago. And at that point in time, as I said, I'd been a long time vegetarian. I'd been a personal trainer for a decade by that point in time, and I was really confident and happy with the way my body looked and functioned following a pretty high protein, low carbohydrate vegetarian diet. And that was pretty much what I advocated to my clients, the high protein, low carbohydrate. At that point in time, I actually watched the documentary Cowspiracy, and I learned that if I was vegetarian for the animals, which I was, I needed to be vegan for the animals. And I made that change pretty much overnight. And I was, to be honest, I was really scared because as a fitness professional, I knew the spotlight would be on me so far as my clients and the other trainers in the gym who were very meat dominant in their approach to nutrition. And I felt a lot of pressure and fear. And as we'll probably get into later in the conversation, luckily I was wrong. There was nothing to be fearful of. Nothing bad happened. In fact, only good things happened.
Great. Well, I know that when I've worked with clients who have been vegan, sometimes they've felt really amazing initially, and then for some of them that carries on, and for some of them the health can take a little bit of a downturn. Have you seen this happen, and why do you think that happens?
I've absolutely seen it happen. I haven't seen it happen without reasons or solutions. And probably most importantly is where you're coming from before you adopt the lifestyle. So a lot of people, maybe they become vegan or even plant-based for their health. And maybe they've bounced around from a lot of more restrictive eating strategies before coming to that one. So it's where you're starting from. Maybe they've done keto or carnivore. Maybe they started with like super low caloric density vegan or plant-based. Like maybe they eliminated all fat, or they went fruitarian, or they went raw. You can do raw well, however, it's harder work. So that would be the first point. And on that, I would probably say get your bloods done before you start such a big change, just so that you know where you're starting from and you're not blaming this new diet, even if you're doing it really well. The other thing, and I know you're going to be so aware of this, is it's not just the body that you consume, it's the body that your body, it's the food that your body assimilates. You know, you might eat great nutrition, but your body might not be utilizing all of those nutrients. Maybe your gut's not coping with this huge lifestyle change and you need to move a little bit more slowly. Final point that I fell for, because the vegan lifestyle is not common, and because a few people, the media in particular, like to hate on the lifestyle, you might be more inclined to blame it for anything that you're feeling. And I did this. I felt really tired at the end of the year, 2 years into vegan, even though I was being super diligent with the way that I ate. I did blame the diet. I went to get all my bloods done. They were all perfect. Not to say they've stayed perfect or I haven't had to supplement anything. They were all perfect at that point in time. And the doctor just asked me through my lifestyle. And we kind of worked out that it was the end of the year. I was pushing really hard before holiday time. And like nearly everyone, I was exhausted. It wasn't the
Mm.
way I was eating, it was the way I was working. So that's something to be really aware of too.
So it sounds like when you change your diet, it's not something to kind of do on a whim. We want to make sure that you're in a good place first in terms of making sure that your bloods are good or looking for any other things that could be going on, but also ensuring that you're getting a balanced diet must be a really big part of it as well. How do people ensure that they are getting a good balance when they're taking out, for a lot of people, what they might only know as protein in terms of animal meats? How can they ensure they are getting good balance when they start taking that stuff out?
Absolutely. And I'll say I probably went over the top with this one. Again, I felt like I had a point to prove, and I felt like I would be letting the lifestyle down if I didn't do it perfectly from the get-go. So I personally looked at all the micronutrients that might be of concern, the iron, the B12, the calcium, the zinc, the omega 3s, and I tried to hit like my daily goals in every single day in every single meal. And I made some meals taste more disgusting than they needed to. For the general person without a huge point to prove who just wants to live happy and healthy, I would say your first port of call is to focus on whole foods. So, nothing good taken away like fiber, nothing bad added like salt, sugar, processed oils, that sort of thing. Next up, you want to focus on diversity. So I am all about abundance and diversity in the way that I eat. And I ate meat for 16 years. I was veggie for 23 years, 8 years vegan. So much more diversity and color and new foods in the way that I eat. It's the opposite of restrictive. The third thing I would say is find those professionals that you trust, either in person or online, and do your research. It doesn't have to be ongoing, but once off to find out, as I said, those micronutrients of control. Where do you get them? So the things that you're losing when you cut out meat, in some regards, like your iron and your calcium and your such, where are your best plant-based sources of those foods that you love, and how can you incorporate them into the meals that you love? And it sounds like a little bit of work, and it is once off in the beginning, but any big lifestyle change, any big change to the way that you eat is a little bit of work to do it well once off, and there is a long term absolutely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like there are some nutrients that we really need to be aware of. And I know a lot of people are quite conscious of like B12 and iron. Are there some that are less well known that people often overlook?
Yeah, I mean, B12 is the one that everyone says supplement with, even though a lot of foods are fortified with it just safe to not muck around with that and supplement. Omega-3s you can get through your foods. I tend to get through hemp seeds, a couple of tablespoons of organic hemp seeds every day. However, a lot of doctors recommend that you supplement with that one as well. So you'd get that from an algae-based omega-3 supplement. We mentioned iron, calcium, obviously, available in a whole heap of plant foods and tending to be some of the delicious ones that I eat so often, like edamame and tofu and lots of legumes and some nuts and seeds. The best switch here is when you're cutting out the cow's milk, make sure you find a plant milk that is fortified with calcium, and it's going to have at least as much calcium as the cow's milk. And I guess important note here on any new plant foods that you're trying, some of them are disgusting and some are delicious. So if you have a really bad plant milk or plant burger or plant cheese, don't judge everyone by how bad it is. You know, some are going to be gross and you'll just find the next one and they're getting better by the day.
Mm. And you mentioning like plant burgers, I see a lot of people who are switching to vegan eating or more plant-based eating who end up eating a lot more processed foods. And I find that quite concerning. So, how does someone make this transition without dramatically increasing or relying heavily on ultra-processed foods?
I find it concerning as well. I love that we have all the options and basically we can eat vegan anything. However, that also means we can be a junk food vegan, and that is definitely unhealthy, as opposed to prioritizing whole food plant based, which is still vegan, but it's around those whole foods. So I think of some of those processed foods as more transitional. So you might use them early days when you're just getting used to the lifestyle, and maybe it would be a little bit overwhelming to cook absolutely everything from scratch. And one by one, you're going to make over your old recipes that you used to love. So transitionally, they have that place. And, you know, as treat foods every single week, they have the place for me as well. But I just look for the options that have a decent, acceptable amount of protein. You know, 15 to 20 grams of protein in a meal is what I'm personally looking for, that don't have too much sodium or fat. So you work them in, you never build your meals around them, but you work them in. And someone I love to follow is Dr. Greger from nutritionfacts.org. He's got all the, if there's anything a little bit confusing or overly sciencey, he's my go-to resource for that. And he advocates a green, yellow, red, light approach to food. And green foods are those foods that you eat in absolute abundance. So your fruits and veggies and legumes and all of that. And yellow are kind of the higher fat and a little bit more processed types of foods. And red are the ultra processed, the vegan junk foods and such. And his approach is that you can have a little bit of those red foods to help all those abundant green foods go down if you need to. So that might be a little bit of vegan mayo over your huge abundant big salad full of leafy greens and cruciferous veg and legumes and crunchy nuts and seeds. If you want that little bit of vegan mayo, you know, go for it, but don't base your meal around those processed foods.
I really love that advice because I think whether you're vegan or not, a lot of people feel like they have to eat completely cleanly. And if they have a little bit of processed food or ultra processed food, then they feel like that they're, ruining their diet, but actually using a little bit of ultra processed food to help 80%, 90% of the green food go down is a really great way of looking at it. I've also noticed that a lot of these like meat replacements are not high in protein. They're not like a protein replacement. So how can someone who is eating vegan ensure that they do get adequate protein intake?
Absolutely. You want to be aware of that with the processed foods. They are getting a lot better. However, we're not building our meal around them. Protein intake, gosh, it varies. Anywhere from zero point 0.5 grams per kilo of body weight is recommended to up to 1.8. I kind of sit in the middle, advocating around the 1.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So I'm looking to get around 70 plus grams a day. As I said, the way I do that is I look to aim for 15 to 20 grams per meal per snack. And it just, again, it's that little bit of work in learning what plant proteins you love most and learning how many grams of protein in a serve. And the difference when you're building a vegan meal as opposed to what you might have been used to is it's not centered, there's not one main event, which is a single animal protein. Your protein's probably going to come from multiple sources. So, you might have your lentil or chickpea curry and it might be served over edamame noodles, and you might scatter it with some hemp seeds and pumpkin seeds. Now, there are three forms of protein. One's also a bit of a fat in the seeds, and one's also a bit of a carb in the lentils. And again, that's a differing point with the plant-based eating approach. But to make it a little bit fun, I kind of came up with what I call the 5 S's of plant-based protein. Shall I run through them?
Yes, please. That sounds great.
Cool. So again, you're just finding what proteins you personally love. And I would say if you hated something as a child, especially with vegetables as well, try them again, give them another chance. You might, your taste buds have likely changed. So the first S is the star. That's when the protein is the star of the meal. It's maybe more what you were used to. It's your marinated tofu in a stir fry. It's your chickpeas in a curry or your lentils in a stew. That's the star. Scatter over is when you have that delicious meal that you're excited to eat and you realize it's a little bit lacking on the protein. This often happens when you're eating out, and that's when you scatter over your mini can of 4 bean mix or the lentils you meal prepped on the weekend, or maybe a half cup or cup of edamame, super versatile. That's the scatter over. Next up, the stir through. This is something you might use at breakfast. You're making your oats, and again, you've swapped the plant milk, you've got your oats and fruit and nuts and seeds. You'd like a little bit more protein, so you stir through your plant-based protein powder, or you stir whatever it may be, some white beans into your smoothie. You'd want to blend that, so that fools my little example there a little bit. Next up, we've got the side. I use this a lot. Again, maybe you're eating the meal that everyone else is eating, minus the main event, minus the meat. So it's delicious, but it's protein lacking. That is where I would have a side again of edamame, crispy chickpeas, whatever you love. The final one is the sauce. Plant proteins are so easy to work into the sauces, and often what you're doing is you're substituting high caloric density fat for protein rich plant protein, so it's a really good substitute. Tofu is amazing in your cheesy sauces, white beans in other sauces, some nutritional yeast, really super versatile. And so it's just building your plant proteins into your meals and snacks at pretty much every opportunity.
Yeah, I really love that. That's really helpful. Probably something people are going to want to rewind and write down, because that I think is helpful for anyone, whether you're vegan or not. So you said about diversity being really important when you're eating your vegan diet. How important is diversity in the protein sources in the diet? Because I see a lot of people who rely on, it might be corn, it might be tofu, or just kind of the same things most days to get their protein in. So how important is it to get variety in the actual protein in the diet?
As important as it is in any other approach to eating. I
Mm.
mean, I had my favorites when I ate animals. Chicken was my go-to, hated fish. I was probably pretty boring. And the same thing with plant-based. You actually, once you give these new foods a go, you're going to find so many new favorites. I never bothered with lentils or legumes before I became vegan. I thought I hated curries for some reason. But once you try these foods, there are so many new exciting foods to try, and diversity is super important. It's also a more cost-effective way to eat if you're eating what is in season or what is on special, more so for some of those plant-based options, or you're learning delicious ways to meal prep or food prep, which is more what I do. I don't make the complete meal, but
Mm.
I might batch, say, big lot of spicy lentils and a protein-packed silken tofu ricotta and a dairy-free pesto and a Mediterranean bean salad. And I've got all those components in the fridge at the start of the week, and then I can build them into the type of meal that I feel like eating on that given week. So again, be aware of diversity, then that lets you almost naturally cover all the various micronutrients that you need. And also, it means you're not getting bored. And also, it means your food is looking delicious to the loved ones around you. It's not just that boring, same old, oh my goodness, that's all she can eat. You don't want it
Mm.
to look like that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds amazing. And you're making me hungry because it's dinner time over
It's
here.
nearly dinner time. Yeah.
So, are there any common challenges or pitfalls that you see people commonly falling into when they're starting to move over to a vegan diet?
There are indeed, and surprisingly, or huge surprise to me, the hardest thing by far is not the food. The hardest thing by far is managing your relationships with non-vegan loved ones. That can be really super tough. In fact, the toughest thing. And the thing that I've learnt the hard way is you need to meet the people, and this is in relation to any big change in the way you eat or in the way you prioritize your health. If you've made a decision and it's really important to you, you can't force it on the people you love. And that's really hard to say because you love them. And if you think it's the best thing, you want the best for them. However, you need to meet the people you love where they are. And you need to realize that we all have different values and beliefs and goals and life experiences. And just because someone gets the same information that you've received, they're not going to necessarily take the same action. So, relationships with loved ones, hands down, the hardest thing. Next up, some people are going to struggle with their guts adopting to potentially increased fiber or just the huge variation in food that we're eating. And I know that you probably see this. I had no problem because I came from a high fiber vegetarian diet. I was conscious of letting the lentils into my day slowly and gradually. Go low and slow is what my favorite gastroenterologist, Dr. Will Volsevich, says. Low and slow with your fiber. Your gut will get there. You need to be patient with it though. If it's been used to a certain way of eating for years and years and years, you need to give it time. So that's really important. What else? Eating out. You need to be polite and yet assertive if there isn't what you want on the menu. Don't go out to a burger restaurant and be stuck with chips and salad, lettuce salad. That's not a proper meal. Look at the menu, see what options there might be to make adjustments and be polite and assertive, because the more we ask, the more there are going to be really healthy vegan options with abundant protein, which is what we want on the menu. The final thing I would say is find those high nutrient value processed foods that that you can enjoy. Transitional, more processed foods. So maybe a like mushroom and bean burger. It's not full of rubbish, but it's a head start for some of your meals. And find those really easy go-to sauces. A sauce dresses up any meal, so maybe again it's your tofu ricotta or your creamy tahini sauce, whatever it may be. It might just be a condiment on its own. I love, with a lazy meal, I love drizzling over some sriracha and then separately drizzling over some balsamic glaze and then finally drizzling over some tahini, not all mixed in together but drizzled over each other. So lazy, so delicious.
Mm.
So I guess they would be some of my first tips.
So delicious and so nutrient packed as well,
Hmm.
right? I
Yeah,
think that about sauces is that there's so much that you can cram into them to get nutrients in.
yeah.
And even if the main meal isn't as nutrient dense as you'd like, the sauce can actually really elevate it.
It can be the start. And again, they can be easy. And if you make whenever I'm bothering to make something, I make a really big batch so that it lasts.
Yeah, absolutely. I did that just before I jumped on here. Actually, I prepped my dinner and I was
Amazing.
like, why do I make this stir fry sauce every time? Why have I not made a big batch of it? So just made a
Exactly.
huge batch and fingers crossed that it's gonna freeze okay.
Amazing. It'll be fine.
So is there anything else that you feel like people need to know before they transition into a vegan diet? Or, you know, in even if the main meal isn't as nutrient dense as you'd like, the sauce can actually really elevate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just before I jumped on here, actually, I prepped my dinner and I was like, why do I make this stir fry sauce every time? Why have I not made a big batch of it? So just made a huge batch and fingers crossed that it's going to freeze okay.
Amazing. It'll be fine.
do you feel like we've pretty much covered it?
There's so much people need to know. However, I would say there's no such thing as a bad vegan, and move at the pace that works for you. What I say to anyone with a really big lifestyle change in mind is to get really clear on your why, because whatever you're doing, whether you're joining the gym or adopting a vegan lifestyle, you're going to be really motivated in the beginning. And then it's going to get struggle street. It does for us all. In relation to a vegan lifestyle, it's usually your interactions with loved ones or eating out. That's usually the struggle street. So get really super clear on your why and build huge emotional intensity around your why. If it's for the animals, at your own pace, seek out those documentaries that maybe you've avoided in the past because they really are emotional fuel. And also seek out those mentors that inspire you. I did this early days when I was that vegetarian trainer in the gym who decided she was going to be vegan. And one of the boys in the gym said, well, goodbye lean muscle mass.
Mm.
And so I sought out vegan athletes that had the body that I was wanting to maintain. And I looked at how they ate and what they did, and they were proof, and I modeled what they did. And that is available for all of us out there online. All of us share everything we eat and how we exercise. So find those people and model them, and be kind to yourself. And as much as you can, be kind to your loved ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine the conversations with your loved ones who aren't on board are probably a really big barrier for a lot of people wanting to move forward into eating vegan. So yeah, I think the tips that you shared are really, really helpful. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I'm sure people are going to want to find out more about what you do and how you do it. So how can people connect with you online and find out more about what you do?
Thank you for asking. My website is strongbodygreenplanet.com. That is where you connect with everything that I do. My healthification podcast, where I'm over 860 episodes deep now,
Wow.
speaking to passionate and compassionate actors, athletes, authors, doctors, and entrepreneurs. So that's my heart. Love it. You also find my plant positive journal via the website, and that's a little venture of the heart that I created to, I guess, simplify all the steps that I've learned over the years so far as creating a fit, strong, healthy, plant-based body. So strongbodygreenplanet.com.
Amazing. I really love the names there. Strong Body, Green Planet, and Healthification podcast. What amazing names. Well done for coming up with
Thank
those.
you. Thank you.
Well, we're going to have all the links to Kate's stuff in the show notes as well. So head there if you want to find out about what she does. But thank you so much for joining us today, Kate, and for getting up so early. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you so much, Louise. I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to having you on Healthification soon.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please do head to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a review, and make sure you hit follow or subscribe. And make sure you also register for my upcoming Metabolism Masterclass, where I'll be sharing the 3 steps that I use with my clients to help them activate the weight loss accelerators and remove the weight loss inhibitors. You can find out more at louisedigbynutrition.com, or use the link in the show notes or the link in my bio on Instagram, which is at Louise Digby Nutrition. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.